Hi there, my name is Rachel. Today I have a video for you on how I color in a yarn knit pattern in a coloring sheet. I'm going to go through the steps of how I actually color it in, and then I'm also going to show you how you can add a yarn knit pattern if the coloring sheet you are using does not already have one for you. So just to give you a little bit of history on this, was a picture that I did last year when Coloring Book Cafe put on a Christmas 5-day challenge where you had to color like three coloring sheets and submit them for a coloring contest. So this was one of the pictures that I had chosen, and I did this little knit pattern. And afterwards, I got a lot of people saying, "So how did you achieve that knit pattern?" And I was kind of like, "Well, the steps required to do it were it was a little bit more than I could just kind of type out." And so I wanted to make a video just actually demonstrating all the steps. Now, anytime that I put out a tutorial video, I use obviously my style of coloring, but I always encourage people to incorporate the pieces that they can into their own style, so you don't have to just do what I do step for step. Kind of see how I do it, and then I use a lot of layers. So if you don't like to do a lot of layers, you can kind of simplify it down to just doing a few layers and getting the same basic effect. Also, the other thing is with the way I color, there are several times when I can kind of stop at any point and the picture could be done. But again, I like to do a lot of layers, and I also like to burnish kind of at the end. So again, if you're kind of coloring along or doing something along those lines and you are happy with how it looks, and I'm going on to like another step, you can kind of just discredit that and just basically take what you can from the tutorial. You don't have to kind of follow it completely religiously. Now I am going to be using this exact same picture again to do the tutorial. I think this picture is absolutely adorable, and I'm mainly doing it because the knit pattern is already, for the most part, completely there. So it's really easy to just kind of dive into. Again, I'm going to take some pictures later on, and I'm going to show you how you can add a knit pattern like this to a coloring if you just have like a sweater or something and you want to make it look knit, but they don't have the lines in already. Now before I start, I want to mention that this picture comes from Coloring Book Cafe Christmas book, one that came out last year. I want to say it is Christmas Scenes is the book this comes from. So you can purchase that book. But right now, if you can catch this video right when it's released, within the first week or so, before November 4th, they are actually putting on a free masterclass where you can get a free PDF 10 Christmas picture download, which includes this picture as well as some of their other really cute Christmas ones from various Christmas books that they have put out. So if you would like to practice doing the knit pattern, and this is a great picture to start with, like I said, you can get this pattern completely free right now. I will put in the description the link to sign up. Now the masterclass that they're putting out, which is going to air on November 4th, I'm not sure the exact time. Probably if you register, it'll give you the time. It's presented by Rachel Pencil Stash, and she's really talented and she has a lot of creative ideas. But one of the bonuses they're doing is they're going to have Rachel Pencil Stash available to do live questions and answers during the I think 45 minutes that their broadcasts go. And then after they put on those master classes, they oftentimes open up their membership, which is a paid membership, and that is only open certain times of the year. I have been a member now for over a year, and I love it because the membership really kind of pays for itself. Not only do they have loads of tutorial videos on how to do different mediums and different ideas for different crafts and stuff, which I really like, you also get to be one of the members in their their private Facebook group where you can compete every month in a coloring competition. And then in addition to that, every month I get a PDF, a free PDF of one of their most recent coloring book releases. Plus, you get a 50% discount on all of their back PDFs. So I really appreciate being a member. You'll probably notice that when I do tutorials, more often than not, I'm going to be using Coloring Book Cafe pictures, and that's because I don't even know how many, probably 800 or more individual coloring pages in PDF format. Okay, so with that, let's get into the tutorial. Okay, so the first thing I have done here is I've just kind of really lightly sketched out how the pattern I want to do for this. Now I'm not going to do the whole mitten. I'm going to just focus on this area here. It's going to take a lot of time to do the whole mitten in. And I wanted to pick some different colors. I'm going to do a green stripe, a white stripe, and a red stripe. Now when doing a knit pattern, it's a good idea actually to have some knit on hand to just kind of look at how the shadows and the light play on. Now larger knit is going to be easier to see, although you want the lighter color. So I have some larger knit here, and then that helps me see how the shadows and the lighting go on the yarn, and that will help when trying to get kind of a realistic yarn look. So today I'm going to be using Castle Art pencils. Now you can use any pencils you want. I do like to use things like Prismacolor. That's one of my go-to pencil sets, and I also like Polychromos, but those are the more expensive pencil sets. Sometimes when I do a tutorial, I want to do it with a more budget pencil so that people can see that they can achieve similar results even if they don't have the high-end pencils available to them. Also, something to take note of is you don't have to worry about matching my colors exactly. I may not even mention the exact pencil color numbers. The idea is to kind of get the general type of pencil I'm using. So if I'm using a dark green, pick a dark green. If I'm using a gray, pick a gray. It doesn't have to be the exact color that I'm using in most cases. So like I said, as I started out here, I'm going to be doing a green stripe, a white stripe, and a red stripe. And I'm going to start out kind of doing one color at a time, stepwise. Okay, for the first step, I am going to use a relatively dark green. If you are going to use the exact colors I'm using, this is Hooker's Green, number 054 of Castle Arts. And what I'm going to do, because I'm going to assume that the lighting is coming from the top, I'm only going to kind of outline the bottom of each knit stitch. And because the knit is, you know, one direction and then the other direction, you will end up moving your hand differently according to which stitch you're working on. So if I start off here, I'm just going to kind of darken the bottoms of each stitch, which will really enhance them. As you can see, I'm not even being that careful. I'm just kind of giving it a general shape. So as you can see, you can already kind of see that knit coming out because I've highlighted, actually darkened, the bottom of each stitch there. So now my next step is I'm going to go in and just darken the underside and kind of deepen that color up. And again, it's not about being super accurate. That really doesn't come into play. It's just kind of about getting the general coloring down. One of the things about making something that's like a more natural pattern is kind of allowing it to be a bit organic, and that is not being so concerned about getting it perfect, because in real life things oftentimes aren't perfect. And so if you allow it to kind of have that just going where it is a little bit, it's going to end up making it almost more natural looking than if you're really good at getting it exact. Okay, now that I've got some base under darker shadow tones in, I'm going to go in with a much lighter color, which is going to be kind of the highlight of the yarn where the light's hitting it. And so for this one, I'm going to go in with leaf green, which is number 111. And I'm going to fill in the rest of that knit stitch. Okay, now I'm going to kind of blend those two colors together a little bit with a mid-tone in-between kind of a green. And in this case, I'm going to use cadmium green, which is pencil 062. Okay, and now I'm going to kind of enhance the shadows of the knit pattern with a gray. And in this case, I'm using kind of a mid-range gray. It's called Cool Gray. It's number 065. And I'm going to do more, it's going to be more like outlining than really coloring at this point. Now, if you'll notice, one of the important parts of this step is to really, really highlight that shadowed inner points at where the yarn would start to go into itself, because it's that extra shadow bit where the yarn is going underneath the next stitch that really kind of enhances that natural yarn look to it. So you want to kind of do it both at the point where it's coming up from the last yarn, and then again at the point where it's going in underneath the next yarn stitch. And as you can see, I'm actually just doing a full-on kind of outline highlight then as well, because this is the shadow. And again, I'm kind of keeping it a little bit heavier on the underside where that light would be hitting from the top. But as you can see, I am also going, because this stitch is kind of bulging out here, which is going to create a slight cast shadow onto the lit stitch. And so it's okay if you kind of outline the whole thing, because you're getting that cast shadow, which also kind of helps give it volume, and again, make it look a little bit more like it's really there and light's hitting it in different areas. Okay, so I'm going to leave the green there for now. Now I'm going to go back and do a little bit of blending and then adding some yarn stitches, but I'm going to go ahead and fill in the red next, and then I'm going to do the white, and then we'll do some final detailing. Okay, to start off the reds, I'm going to go in with my deep tone, which I'm actually going to start with an Indian red, so it's going to be almost a reddish maroonish brown for the deeper tone. And again, I'm going to start by kind of just highlighting in the undershadows of each stitch. Okay, and then I'm going to go in by just coloring in about, not quite halfway, maybe a third. It might end up being like halfway, but I try and get about a third of the bottom of each stitch with that deeper color then. Alright, now I'm going to go in with a much lighter red, which is going to be a scarlet red here, which is number 22. Okay, then I'm going to do a mid-tone red to kind of blend the darkers with the lighter area. And I'm going to start with the Venetian red, which is kind of a it's almost an orange. It's more of an orange light red than a pink light red, because I want to kind of keep this yarn red and not looking too pink. And because I kind of want to lighten up the light areas with the red, and it's going to depend on what color you use. Some colors have better lights, and some colors have better darks. In this case, the red is a little too vibrant. If I do too many layers with the lightest red that I've used, it's going to end up being a very dark red. So I'm going to actually go in with a flesh tone, just to highlight and mix in the lighter highlights for the red area. And then I'm going to go back in with the same cool gray that I used on the green, and I'm going to try and define the shadows and really get the tips and points that are weaving under each other to be darker. Okay, so again we have the basic yarn you can see for the green and the red. You can see there's highlights on the top, you can see there's the shadows underneath, and then you can see that there's the shadows of the grayer shadows that are of the stitches going in and out of it. I am going to go back and do some finishing things, but now I want to move on to the white, which is going to be a little bit different because it doesn't have the color, so I'm not going to be using and I'm not going to be doing it exactly the same as I did the green and the red, which is why I want to put some white in here. So for this tutorial, I'm going to go in with a Prismacolor white to do this next step. If you want to try and do it with the white of a Castle Arts, if that's the only thing you have, you can go ahead. I find that the Castle Arts white is just not, it's not opaque enough, and it doesn't actually do much. So I'm not going to use that one. Other things you can try are just doing lighter with some of the other colors and then going over with like a colorless blender. But if you want to do it the way I do it, I will use a Prismacolor white to do the white stitches. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill in all of the white stitches with a base white to get the wax, basically almost like blocking off, to get the wax on all the knit stitches. And you're not going to see, when I'm done, you're not going to see the white at all, but I'm going to fully cover every single stitch. Okay, so now I have fully covered the whole white yarn section with the Prismacolor, and I'm going to start going in with grays to just add a hint of shadow. So I'm going to take that cool gray that I did the shadow of the other colors with. Okay, now because the white is lacking a little bit of that shade, I'm going to go with in one of the lightest grays I can find, which is a warm gray light, number 120 here. And again, I've blocked the paper with that white, so I'm really just going to try and get some cast shadows with this light gray. Okay, so sometimes I switch up what I'm doing. So that light gray was a little too light because the Prismacolor white kind of overpowered it. So what I'm going to do is I've already put it in where the light gray is. Now I'm going to go back in with the cool gray, and I've got enough layers on here that it's going to actually kind of inhibit that color. So it should make it lighter than it was before, but it will just help to kind of deepen up where that really light gray was, which I can kind of see from here, but you probably can't see any difference with the light gray I just had. So I'm going to go through with this cool gray now and kind of blend in those shadows. And if you'll notice, I'm really highlighting the points of each one, which really kind of gives this the yarn the volume. So it looks like it's puffing out, which really helps to enhance the look that this is yarn and it's 3D and it's not just colored in 2D colors. Okay, now like I said, I like to do several different layers. What I'm going to start doing, the white is pretty much burnished at this point, and I will still go in and do some fine detailing, but I'm going to try and burnish the green and the red. Now if you don't like to burnish, or you don't like to do that many layers, you can always feel free to skip these steps, but for the final effect that I'm looking for, I like to have it nicely burnished. And I actually have two choices. I could go in and burnish like the green with the lightest green I was using, or because I like my Prismacolor, I can also burnish with the white Prismacolor, and I will do it halfway. I'll do white burnishing here, and I will do the color burnishing here so you can see the difference. So in this case, I'm going to be pressing much harder than I was before. And what I'm doing is, and I'm sorry for the camera shake, I'm pressing hard and I'm now flattening and crushing all of the paper tooth, and therefore getting a full color coverage without seeing that paper tooth showing through. Okay, so there I burnished with the light green. Now I'm going to go ahead and burnish the top half with the white Prismacolor. And depending on what pencil set you are using, you're going to get slightly different effects. Some of the budget pencils don't burnish as well. Some of the higher end ones burnish much differently. So that's why I'm going to kind of show you some of the differences. And obviously, because I'm using a white, the color of the yarn is going to be different. So if you're going to do this as a full-on picture, unless you're doing a pattern, you want to keep it consistent. But I'm just going to kind of show you the difference and the reasons why I oftentimes use my Prismacolor white for doing special effects. Okay, so you can kind of see that there is definitely a color difference between the one. This is a very bright color. This is a much more muted yarn color. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for the reds. In this case, I'm going to use that lightest color I use, which is the flesh tone. I'm not going to go to the brighter red because I'm afraid that if I burnish with the brighter red, it's going to really overpower it. And now I'm going to do the top stitches with the whites, and you will see that it is a much lighter, ends up being a much lighter yarn again. And as you can see, the white really, because the Prismacolor white is very opaque, it actually has pretty much overpowered that red. Now, one thing I can do with that section is I can then go in with my deeper red, the Scarlet Red, and kind of go over that again to kind of bring more of that color back in. And actually, I'm also going to go over the green with that mid-range, the cadmium green, to bring a little color back to where I have the white on there. So now you can see that I've added the extra color to kind of bring that color back. So you might be wondering why I would use the white Prismacolor at all, and the reason is, if you can see, the burnishing with the Castle Arts, because it is a much more transparent pencil, you can still kind of see that colored pencil texture a little bit through, whereas the burnishing in the white area is much smoother. So you might have to add some extra colors. And now that the white has been put on there, when I put the other color on, it comes down in a smooth layer because I have now made the texture paper smooth with that white on there. And so any of these points, again, you could stop at this point and it would look pretty decent, but I'm going to go ahead and go in with a little bit of extra detailing to really enhance the yarn. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with the black and really kind of deepen those points on all of the yarn. So now I have a really nice contrast between the shadow area, and again, sometimes I like to just go in and really soften some of those shadows so that there's a nice distinct difference. I'm going to go in with my white and just soften. And if you notice how the Prismacolor white is pulling that gray, and that's actually exactly the reason I use the Prismacolor white. Other colors would maybe just color over it, but I actually want to move that color around, and that's what the Prismacolor white pencil does. Is it actually moves that black into the center and makes that really soft shadow. So now you can kind of see how that white really looks very yarny at this point. And I'm going to go ahead and try and do the same thing on the colored with the white part too. So what I'm doing in a sense is pushing that shadow around with the white Prismacolor pencil. So as you can see, I've kind of reshaped the shadow lines with that white, and this area I'm going to leave as it is with the castle art. I'm not going to do the white here, but so you can kind of see the difference. And the reason I use the white, it does dull the color, but it really helps to move the shadows to be exactly how I want. And I think that this looks a little bit more like yarn than it does right here. If I want, I can kind of go in this area with my dark green and try and soften those shadows a little bit. But because the texture of the Castle Arts pencils is not as waxy and it's not as soft, it doesn't push the other colors around. I can only do extra highlights. I can't really alter the shape of the colors that are there right now. So now I have done my detailing with the green, and you can see this also looks like yarn. They're two different effects. I personally like this look better, but it is much more muted. It does have a less vibrant color, and I could always go over with a lighter green and try and just add a little bit of color to this section too. But just two different ways. It's pretty much the same technique. It's just using different kinds of pencils. Okay, now I'm going to go in and soften the shadows on the red with the white as well. And then again, I'm going to go in for this half, I'm going to go in with the darkest red I used, which was the Indian red, and try and soften the difference between the harsh shadows and the lighter area. And now to bring some color back to the side with the white, I'm going to go in and add a little bit of the deeper color back to those darker. And you will, the white is going to make it so that you don't get that full red color. And I'm going to go ahead and do the light just a little bit around where that white is. And I'm going to enhance the green the same way with that darker. And then I'm going to also go in with the lighter and give a little bit of green color back to the whiter areas. And then for the white, I'm going to go in with the cool gray to just kind of blend those corners. And so now you can kind of see how that white really looks, really like kind of shadowed yarn. It does look a little bit less, a little bit more dingy maybe than if I had done more white, but I kind of like that the shadow because yarn has several threads, and so it kind of brings out that thread look. Now you can add threads also to kind of give it that extra yarn look at the very, very end. Okay, so starting with a different color green than I've been using, I'm now going to go in with a Viridian, which is a very dark green, probably about the same as the other one, but I want these to be distinct lines. And for this one, I'm actually going to want a much sharper point. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add thread lines along the direction that the yarn is going, but I'm going to try and keep it to the shadow side only. And then I have to make sure I'm following the direction of that yarn. My hand's not quite going the right direction here. And you can see how those lines just kind of help bring out the idea that it's a multi-fibered yarn. And I'm going to do the same with the red, but I'm going to use a dark brown, Van Dyke brown, because I don't really have a deeper red than the Indian red that I'd already used. Okay, so that should give it just a little hint of some fibers going on. As you can see, I kind of did different directions on each of these. There isn't really a right or a wrong way, just to give it a little bit of a visual difference between the top part of the yarn and the bottom part to kind of show there's some multi-textures in there that are going into shadow. So that is the basics of how I do my yarn patterns. Now, depending on what you like, I think that this is a smoother transition, but it's definitely less saturated. Now, it also depends on what color pencils you're using. If you're going to use the white, or you could also use a colorless blender. I find that the white pushes the colors around a little bit better. So I really like how the white comes out. This is a little desaturated for color. So I might have wanted to go with a stronger set of color pencils than the Castle Arts, which is a pretty transparent, but they do have nice colors. And the section that I didn't do the white in doesn't get quite as smooth, but it actually doesn't look that terrible. It's really more a matter of preference, and I just wanted to show the difference if you're doing things. If you're starting out and you're going to be using like the Prismacolor white, you might want to check ahead of time what the saturation. For the most part, that is exactly how I had done this. This was with Arteza, so they were a little bit more, the Artezas are a little bit stronger pigment, I think, for the Prismacolor white. I'm sure I did use Prismacolor white, although I may have gone in more with Arteza grays. At this point, I don't actually remember, but I still have those extra fibers at the end, and the kind of the under fiber got more muted, but that actually kind of helped enhance the look of it being kind of a realistic looking fiber. So it's just dependent on how you like it. And you can also see how the areas that have the darker pockets, that really does enhance the look of that realistic yarn going into shadow. So one of the key tips is getting those dark points. But again, it's going to kind of be a matter of taste. Okay, so now I'm also going to go into how to add a knit texture to something that doesn't actually already have knit texture or a full knit texture. And there's different ways you can go about. You can use a regular pencil and just draw the lines in very light. You can go in. I'm going to go in with my Castle Arts black that I was using to add in the lines. You can also go in with a light regular pencil and then add the lines in with like a liner pen so that the lines are as dark as the actual picture. So there's two different ways to do it depending. This already is kind of a knit. It just doesn't have the individual knit stitches. So this one I'm just going to add the stitches because the lines are already there for me. And really all it is a matter of adding chevrons every 2 spaces. So to add a knit pattern in, I'm just simply going to add a chevron. To every 2 spaces, and then it's going to go back the other direction. And if you can match up your corners, it's going to make it look like one knit stitch to the next. And obviously when it gets kind of off the side, it's just a matter of however you want to do it. So I've added in my chevrons in between, and now if I just want to kind of enhance that, the yarn, I'm just going to round out the edges. And again, if you do this with a basic pencil, you can kind of erase your lines. If I do enough layers, and since I always do the shadow in the corners anyway, it's not really going to matter if I have extra draw lines. But again, if you want to, go ahead and erase all your sketch lines, or actually line all of your lines with an actual pen liner at the end so that you have the full-on thing. So I'm just going to round out all of those lines, and that's going to give me my knit pattern. So as you can see, I could do that exact thing all the way up the sleeves here and do it in the body. But it's just simply a matter of adding in those zigzag lines, lining up the ends, and then kind of rounding out to make that stitch. Also, if you're wondering about this picture, in this picture, these both come from the same book. It comes from Coloring Book Cafe again, and this came from one of their winter. It wasn't a Christmas one, it was a winter one. It was a winter one, and it was called Winter Scenes, I believe. So this is a really cute book. You can see this cute little puppy here. But again, if you start with a page where you'd like to add that knit pattern, you can just go ahead and draw in your own guidelines and then start coloring with the shading again. I'm not going to actually color this in, I'm just showing you how you can add those lines. So this one also comes from that same book, the Winter Scenes, and for this one, if I wanted to add a knit pattern to this top blanket, what I'm going to do first, and for anything, is I'm just going to make those initial ridge lines. So I'm going to follow the shape of the object. So I'm going to make just parallel lines following the shape of the object that I want to add my knit pattern to. And of course you can make it as large or as small as you want. I find that doing the knit pattern a little bit larger makes it easier to do some of that shading and get that real depth in that makes it look like yarn. I have done some really small knit, and you don't have to do as much, you just kind of do a dark under half and a lighter over half, but it doesn't end up with quite that knit shadow and shading in there. So you just add lines however they go to following the lines that are there, and then just like before, you just start adding in zigzags. Now I'm going to kind of zigzag it along this same curve here. But you can add these chevrons in, just make sure the lines touch at the tips, and you don't have to be too worried about making it look perfect. I'm going to add those chevrons in. And then again, I'm just going to round out each of those segments. And this would be one of those like really thick, kind of chunky knit blankets, as looks like it is here. Maybe it's a sweater, maybe it's a blanket. So just rounding out those corners. And then I have my knit pattern for which I can start doing the shading on whatever side. And one thing to note is, depending on the direction that the knit goes, you can either shade the sides like I had done with the other one. If the lighting is coming from here, you can shade this half of all the sides for a lighting that comes from one angle, and if you want to do it from the top of the knit, you can just shade under each stitch as well. So depending on how you want the lighting, depending on the direction that these stitches are going, you can still achieve that light coming in from one angle and the shadow being underneath. Okay, so that concludes my tutorial on how to achieve a knit-like pattern in a drawing. Hopefully you found something that you can take away from this. You certainly don't have to do it the same exact way that I do it. I know I do a lot of layers, and sometimes I may overlayer so differently than you would have in your style. So don't feel like you have to religiously follow it. Just kind of take notes on what it is that achieves the look that you're looking for. So that will be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.